Hello, and welcome to History Mysteries, where I talk about interesting and little known facts covering historical happenings from ancient times through to modern history. Today, I'm talking about the mystery connection between the June Rebellion in France and what connects it to the American Declaration of Independence and the musicals Hamilton and Les Mis. The mystery connection is the Marquis de Lafayette, and I'll go on to show you why really Lafayette should have appeared in Les Mis. Let me start by making it clear that the June Rebellion was not part of the French Revolution. And while the storming of the Bastille is a very famous moment, I put it to you that you may actually know quite a lot about the June Rebellion, which took place 50 years after the Bastille. Yes, the June Rebellion is the famous barricade scene in Victor Hugo's classic novel Les Mis. Well, I'm sure that at the time, many people thought that the removal of Louis XVI and the hated Marie Antoinette would lead to a better life for the common people. This did not come to fruition, and the seeds of discontent remained. For context, France has been through many constitutional evolutions since the Ancient regime, and by 2020, it has been a kingdom 3 times, an empire twice, and a republic 5 times. So why were the French people rebelling so soon after their famous revolution? Here's a simple summary in about 30 seconds. Immediately after the French Revolution, we have the Republic, 1789, and then the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, which leads to the declaration of the First Empire in 1804. In 1814, France sees the restoration of the monarchy, despite Napoleon's best efforts. But Louis XVIII would then rule for 10 years, and Charles X succeeded Louis and reigned for 6 years. In 1830, Louis-Philippe, a distant cousin of King Louis's head, was placed on the throne by the revolutionaries and parliamentarians. So in summary, the French Revolution took place May 1789 to November 1799. Napoleon ruled from 1804. The monarchy returns in 1814. Louis-Philippe takes the throne in 1830. The June Rebellion was the 5th and 6th of June 1832. And 30 years later, in 1862, Les Mis is published. So now let me talk a little bit more about the immediate period leading up to the June Rebellion and the circumstances in which Lafayette plays a part, and the not-so-veiled connections between the musicals Hamilton and Les Mis. Despite initially appearing to be an entirely decent man, Louis-Philippe managed to fall into all the same problems as the earlier kings. To hear Victor Hugo himself tell it, what is there against him? That throne. Take away Louis-Philippe the king, there remains the man, and the man is good. So the French were once again rebelling against the throne, and the same revolutionaries who had chosen Louis-Philippe as king only 2 years earlier tried to overthrow him in 1832. So now you know the background, let's focus on the mystery connections. Les Amis de l'ABC, loosely translated as Friends of the Downtrodden and nicknamed the Barricade Boys by the fans, represent a lightly fictionalised version of a branch of the Society of the Rights of Man, the main organisation behind the June Rebellion. Because the law forbade groups of larger than 20 people, the society was split into divisions of 20 men each. The close-knit nature of Les Amis reminds the reader of one of these divisions, made up, among others, of Enjolras, Grantaire, Marius, and of course Gavroche. The name of the Society of the Rights of Man was a reference to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, which had been drafted during the Revolution of 1789 by the Marquis de Lafayette, inspired by Thomas Jefferson, who helped Lafayette draft the declaration, borrowing heavily from the American Declaration of Independence. From 1789, Lafayette continued to be an integral figure in French politics. By 1830, Lafayette, now in his 70s, was no longer the guns and ships firebrand of the American Revolution, but had become an elder statesman of France. After the 1830 Revolution, the Parliament had even offered Lafayette the throne. However, it was Louis-Philippe who was given the throne, and once he began to rule, he was just as autocratic as old King Louis. Lafayette was not happy with this, and so withdrew himself from the royal court and only came to Paris when the Parliament met. In 1832, there had already been 2 minor rebellions, one in Paris and one in Lyon, so the National Guard were on high alert. By early 1832, the ongoing cholera epidemic was affecting the poor residents of Paris particularly hard, and many even suspected that the government was poisoning the wells of Paris to reduce the population of the poorest people. Nothing like an epidemic to reduce trust in the government and create conspiracy theories, and that's all I'm saying on that. The cholera epidemic did not just affect the poor of Paris, however. Although over 18,000 of them died, it also took the life of General Lamarque, who fans of Les Mis will know is the final trigger for the scenes that lead to the June Rebellion. So a few words on Lamarque, his importance to the rebels, and his mystery relationship with Lafayette. Jean-Maximilien Lamarque was a military man who rose to prominence in the army of Napoleon. Despite Napoleon's fall, Lamarque remained prominent and became a champion of the people within the French Parliament. Lamarque died on the 1st of June 1832 of cholera. His funeral was held on the 5th of June 1832, and in the eyes of the populace, the last defender of the people had died. And, despite his advanced age, Lafayette would serve as one of the pallbearers at Lamarque's funeral in honour of his friend's service, somewhere about here. As the coffin and its procession were travelling through Paris, an unknown protester, Enjolras in the story, raised a red flag reading La Liberté ou la Mort, liberty or death. Shots were fired by both the revolutionaries and the army. Small bands of working-class revolutionaries, as well as students, stole Lamarque's coffin, and the cry went up, "To the barricades!" The crowd redirected the procession to La Place de la Bastille, where the French Revolution had started in 1789. There they made their stand. That night, the National Guard, who had 20,000 men, surrounded the revolutionaries. Although there's no evidence that any policeman, such as Inspector Javert, visited the barricades that night as a spy. But how was Victor Hugo involved, and why did he make this episode such an integral part of his novel? As Hugo recounted, as a young man in June 1832, he was writing in the Tuileries Gardens, then and now a park in central Paris, when he heard gunfire from the direction of Les Halles, then and now a market. Instead of hurrying home, Hugo followed the sounds through the empty streets. He found himself surrounded by barricades and took shelter between columns in the street. He recalled that, for around 15 minutes, bullets flew both ways. 93 rebels were killed and nearly 300 were wounded. The next morning, the remaining rebels surrendered, and King Louis-Philippe rode through the streets, accompanied by his sons and applauded by his troops. To bring our story to a close, let's look at what happened to the key players. Lafayette would continue to criticise the decisions of Louis-Philippe until his own death 2 years later at the age of 76. Louis-Philippe would eventually be overthrown in 1848 when a similar rebellion gained enough support from the people of Paris, and Louis-Philippe fled to London, where you may have seen him play by this guy in Series 3 of Victoria. Victor Hugo would never forget his experience that day in 1832, and, after taking 17 years to finalise his narrative, would publish Les Mis in 1862. Without Hugo's account, the June Rebellion would almost certainly otherwise be forgotten, especially in the English-speaking world. But the spirit of the June Rebellion lives on, in protests across the world. And now you know the mystery character, the Marquis de Lafayette, and his connection between American independence and the June Rebellion, and so between Hamilton and Les Mis. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, give the video a like, let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more history mysteries. For news on upcoming videos and shorter history facts, follow me on Instagram or Tumblr, links are in the description.